There is a huge difference between the most expensive new Season Pass tank and of course the free-ish Season Pass that you can pick up on World of Tanks, and today we are looking at one of the brand new Season Rank 100 rewards, the Bandit, which is a Cold War vehicle, but I'll tell you what, this one actually feels insanely fun to play, and it is once again in complete contrast to what you've seen with the Ruthless. This thing is actually really fun to play. It's not boring at all, and although it may not be overpowered or in fact boring for opponents to come up against, it is very good and very fun to play. And I think that Wargaming have actually got this tank right, which if you watch yesterday's video on the Ruthless might just be a little bit different. So we're going to have a look at this vehicle. Of course, it is a Era 2 Cold War vehicle, and the Bandit is kind of one of those that kind of almost acts as a medium tank and a kind of brawling medium tank in that regard, even if it is kind of classified as maybe like an armoured medium. This tank just doesn't have any armour, and so you get penned by absolutely everything. You can see the armor model here, very easy to pen the upper plate, very easy to pen the lower plate, very easy to pen the sides. And essentially, then you've got the turret, which is also made of paper. So anyone is going to be able to pen this tank. So when it comes to coming in up against it, it is basically an auto-aim for most people. Now, should you auto-aim? No. Always aim your shots if you can. But yeah, this one is not going to be expecting to bounce a whole lot of rounds. But with that being said, this tank is actually really good at outputting damage, which, I mean, if you're interested in, playing to the utmost ability, and often, the higher skill cap tanks are ones that maybe don't have the most armor, but have that damage potential, and this certainly does because of the fact that this has that 550 alpha damage gun, which for Era 2, if we were to have a look, for example, at a couple other tanks, is actually quite hard. I mean, even the AMLAD is lower, you got the Type 59, all lower, continuously lower. You get my drift. This has decent alpha for the era it's in with 550, which means it's up there with some of the big boys. Now, is it the highest alpha that you can get in the tier? No, or era I should say. But it is very high on that list, and that means that not only are you going to be able to mobilize around the battlefield with the 70 kilometers an hour top speed, which is really nice, and trust me, you maintain that speed really well, alongside the fact of getting up to that top speed is not too bad with the power to weight ratio. It's not the highest in Cold War, but I feel like this actually gets really good terrain resistances comparatively to some of the other vehicles that you have in the game, and it might not seem like it does, but in game it just feels really nice. Although there are faster tanks, and by far there are a lot of faster tanks, it doesn't quite feel the exact same, and that's kind of where I'm at with this vehicle. You see tanks like the Type 59D have slightly better terrain resistances, but obviously they don't have the top speed, and they also have worse power to weight ratios, so it's all about kind of lining it up with how you're expecting this tank to work. So it is very good at maintaining speed. It also gets that 550 alpha, and of course gets a decent amount of view range. It's nothing spectacular, and we could boost it up even more, and it would potentially be something you could do if you were to drop ventilation and put on advanced optics. That is something you can do, and it would be kind of beneficial to do that, but ultimately it's up to you. And for Cold War, I'm not really interested in getting assistance. I'm all about that damage per minute. And damage per minute on this vehicle is 4,736 in the way that we've set it up. So we have gone for all of the bonuses that you can get to your damage per minute on any vehicle, which is advanced loader, ventilation, and then for our commander we've also gone with rapid loading to boost up that damage. Now that is really important in trying to make this tank work, because you want to reload as quickly as possible and deal that 550 damage. Now, for example, if we were to look at the Magash 5, which, bearing in mind, doesn't have a commander in it, so it is going to have an impact, it is still higher. And then, you know, we could stick in basically a look at any of these, and they've all got similar sort of range, 3,900. This one's got 5,000, so very, very high damage per minute, but it doesn't get kind of that top speed, and you've got to factor all of these things in to really make tanks like this work 100%, and that's what we are doing in today's video. And I mean, you compare it to the Condor and it's like, I wonder what tank I'd rather play. Now the Bandit does get, unfortunately, heat rounds, which don't have the best kind of quality when you're playing in Cold War, since heat rounds are sunk by essentially spaced armor, and given that yeah, there's quite a few tanks with spaced armor in this game, it's probably not the best round to use. So essentially you've got to use your standard rounds with 408mm of penetration. Oh no, how terrible. And now, granted, it is on the lower side of all of the tanks in the game, but you know, you compare it to some of the other tanks in Era 2, and it doesn't feel so bad. It's kind of in that mid-range. It's nothing terrible, but it is, you know, on the lower side. But 408 pen, as long as you're aiming for weak points and use that DPM, you'll be fine with this tank. There's really no problems in that regard, so you don't really have to worry all too much, which is why I really enjoy using the Bandit compared to some of the other vehicles. And I highly recommend you guys actually try out this tank and give it a go. And essentially it is the Season Pass rank 100 reward, so all you have to do, get to Season rank 100, buy the normal Season Pass, which is 2,000 gold, you get 2,100 gold back, and you get a load of key cards, which can potentially give you a ton more gold as well. So yeah, really nice in that way. And it also has a ridiculous silver boost. You get 65% silver, so really good at earning silver, and we'll see that in the results as we move through this video. So talking about that, let's jump into the video and of course the gameplay portion of it. Now then, the first game that we do have is on Dragon's Ridge, and when you're in the Bandit you can see how quick off the mark this tank actually is. Apologies to the starship there for accidentally hitting into him. I do press sorry, but either way, what are we doing in this game? Well, we are going to try and take the hill area up here, use the gun depression in this tank, and also get into position. The gun depression of this vehicle being such that you have 6 degrees, so it is usable, and considering how low profile this tank is, it doesn't actually feel too bad. Now, there are tanks with, you know, 10, 12, 15 degrees of gun depression at the top end, but this tank with the 6 degrees, because of the low profile, really nice to use. But more importantly, when you are using this tank, it is an absolute sniper, and it's capable of really kicking out a ton of damage, as well as being really aggressive when you want to be, and that is what makes me really like and love playing this vehicle, and why I've been actually playing it when I don't need to, or at least when I don't need to record a video. I enjoy using it, and it's going to be my go-to for earning silver, since it is just that much fun. And it's nice to play it when there aren't like 10 of them on each team, because of the fact that no one's really reached rank 100 yet, and I've been lucky enough to be able to get it as part of the kind of community contributor program, which, you know, gives you the ability to rent tanks, and therefore I can show it off to you guys and hopefully give you an indication of what this tank's all about, and especially if you are not sure as to how to take these ones out. Now, obviously you know about this one. It's a very easy one to take out. I mean, it's just basically point and shoot at it, and you're most likely going to pen. Now, the side armor can actually work. You can actually bounce a few rounds when you're using that side armor, because of the fact that it's got those space plates, but at the end of the day, it's not very often that is really going to save you from a whole lot within this game. So we end up hitting the RDF there. We have pushed into this location where we can use this house over to the right. It is a destructible house, so it could potentially get taken out by some of the enemy team, but we're not fussed about that. I'm not bothered. If it does, it does. It looks like we are just ruffle stomping the enemy team here, and it's not like they're really doing a whole lot back to our team, so I've got no issues with sitting more aggressively or out in the open, etc. Now, I'm trying to get into a position to use gun elevation. Now, this is something that you may find within this tank. It doesn't have the best elevation, so as soon as you start going down a slope, you can find yourself in a bit of a sticky situation. Now, my friend here in the FE4211s decided to destroy some of the building that I was using, and then decides to YOLO off in. So in typical fashion on Cold War, the game has been going for about 3 minutes and the enemy team are basically losing this game. And it's very obvious. These are the typical games you get in Cold War. It's just kind of one side wins the game instantly, you can tell, and then it's just a case of can you survive long enough to either A, do damage when you're winning, or B, try and actually do damage to the opponents when they're just YOLOing you because they've won the game. Now, I'm in that YOLO phase, so what do? Well, I'm coming in swift. And that is with a nice little ram on the WZ-112 or I don't know, 122, and we managed to hit him, finish off the Conqueror. We come in swooping, aiming at a different guy. We hit the M60A3 and then we decide to cap. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, team. We definitely needed to cap that game. But epic victory. Didn't manage to pick up a huge amount of damage, but you could see that this tank is really good in those aggressive positions, and the battle lasting 3 minutes and 35 seconds, 5,200 damage with 400,000 and silver actually made within the game isn't at all bad. We then move into the very next game on Corellia. Corellia being one of the maps that I feel like is actually really nice to play, and it feels like you can do a ton of damage. There's a lot of flexibility that you can use on this map when it comes to the late game. Now early game not so much, it's kind of corner fighting over on this flank, but once you get past that it's actually not too bad. Now we are pushing kind of forward to try and get into a nice position at the beginning of the game such that we can kind of farm up some damage on this flank if we can manage to win it. And of course the harder you push and kind of get into a good position to get a crossfire, the easier the game is going to be and the better you're going to find yourself dealing damage. Now this is not the ideal position, although we can get kind of hold down in this thing. We are kind of stuck in this location whereby, you know, you have to poke these guys to try and deal some damage, but at the end of the day you don't have armor. Even on the turret you can get penned, so we have to be a little bit careful just kind of poking when we think we can get some damage and just trying to go for those easy shots using the brilliant accuracy when we do have time to fully aim or when the opponents aren't quite making the right sort of plays. Now the M103 comes out and gives us our first shot of damage of quite a few this game, and you're going to see how the armor isn't quite holding up. We're getting penned in the turret, and of course the more and more we're poking out, the more chance of us actually getting hit is, and it's likely we're going to take a few more. But I'm happy because the game is probably going to be pretty quick, as Cold War has just been infinitely quicker than some of the World War II games, which is both a negative and a positive all in one. I'm not a massive fan of when games you know, take so long, or if it's just a camp fest, but when it's so quick that, you know, your team all get taken out within, you know, 5 seconds of the game starting and you're left against 15 opponents, it's not particularly very fun. But you know, that's just my own personal opinion. I'm sure loads of people just enjoy the casual aspect of playing some of the Cold War tanks and just kind of being able to YOLO a bit more. That is kind of what I get. I feel like there isn't much use of camo since everyone can spot you, and yeah, basically you're just spotted in a bush even when you're not spotted. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where there's a bit less thought process. It's more about just being upfront and personal and just basically focusing on trying to get your aim as good as possible and knowing the weak points, which is not necessarily a bad thing, and it might actually be a good way to train playing World of Tanks if you're a new player, to kind of understand how you can actually kind of pen things with the sorts of weak points, albeit there's spaced armor, so that kind of leads into the fact that now you know about spaced armor, etc. It's just a good understanding, I think, and it's a really easy one because you don't lose money in this game when you play Cold War, essentially. So with that being said, we've dealt 3,000 damage, but I'm not kind of happy there. We want to get some more damage, and we managed to pen the FV4211 through the upper plate, so the 400 pen really not coming in all too bad. But at this point it's time to go in. I found myself a nice little T55 who we completely ignore after hitting him because there's not going to be any damage left on that guy, so we go straight for the M60A2. We come in, we try and ram him for as much damage as we can deal. It was not worth it in terms of how much kind of damage we actually took here, but I'm trying to move and then we get kind of blocked in. But can we get the final shot on him? Yes, we can. There we go. 5,807 damage done with 913 assistance within, once again, 4 minutes of the game beginning. So, yeah, games on Cold War really last a long time. I think the maximum I've ever lasted on Cold War is about 5 minutes or something like that. They literally do not last long, and it's actually a great way of farming through challenges if you're after trying to complete all of those season challenges quickly or complete your mercenary contracts. Because the games end so quickly, you can rack up through multiple games for every one game that you might play when you're playing on World War II, which is always good. And we're coming to the highest kind of timeline in Cold War that I've seen, and as we're coming closer to the 10-minute mark left in the battle. I don't think I've ever actually had to come forced with a draw or forced with one team winning, and maybe we'll make it to the 10-minute mark, but it doesn't seem very likely with the M60A2 just coming in to take out the BMP2. Looks like we went the wrong way and we don't get any more damage in this game, but the Bandit having a pretty decent round, and it's mainly about the silver when I'm playing premium tanks in Cold War, picking up 5,800 damage with our teammate there dealing 7,000 in his starship or whatever you want to call it. So really good game in terms of the silver, and a not a bad game considering the length of that game. So hopefully that was a really quick stop tour of what the Bandit's all about. It's fast, aggressive, and really needs to be played as an aggressive kind of tank. And of course you can snipe towards the mid and late game when you're trying to kind of play a bit more conservatively. You don't want to be YOLOing in at the beginning. I'm just saying you need to be close enough to your teammates, or the vast majority of your teammates, that you can play that support role, and it's probably going to work out quite well, because as soon as you start leading off that track and trying to do your own thing, things like the FE4211 will just try and YOLO you, and yeah, when they YOLO you, it doesn't tend to end up very well, because we all know what the FE4211 is actually like in the game. But of course, if you like this vehicle, if you enjoy this video, then let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, check out yesterday's video on the brand new Ruthless tank destroyers. I'm sure you'll love that if you enjoyed this review. But other than that, I hope you did enjoy, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.